The stars outside the viewport stretched into long, thin streaks as the Aurora Vanguard sped through the outer edge of the Xeron expanse. Lieutenant Mara Vey sat in the pilot's chair, fingers tapping on the control panel almost unconsciously. She wasn't nervous, she never admitted to fear, but something about this mission made her heart beat faster than usual. Humanity had never met the Arlith before, not like this. First contact had always been through probes, messages, or distant scans. Now she was flying straight into the territory of an alien civilization older than Earth itself. Her communicator beeped, and Commander Harlan's voice came through, calm and precise. "Lieutenant Vey, you're approaching the designated rendezvous point. Remember, diplomacy first. Avoid any sudden moves. The Arlith do not appreciate what they consider impulsive behavior." Mara smirked. "Noted, Commander. I'll try not to trip over my own 2 feet while saving humanity." The commander chuckled, a rare sound over the comms. "You're the best we have, Lieutenant. Just be careful. The Arlith are powerful beyond our understanding. They do not forgive mistakes lightly." Mara exhaled slowly and looked at the swirling colors of the nebula ahead. The Xeron expanse was beautiful in a dangerous kind of way. Stars shimmered like shards of glass, and the dark shadows between them seemed to move of their own will. And somewhere within that beauty lived the Arlith Queen, Velira, legendary, mythical, deadly. The stories told in hushed tones on Earth described her as both cruel and wise, capable of bending entire fleets to her will without lifting a finger. Mara had spent months studying every scrap of information on her and her species, but knowledge alone wasn't enough. The Aurora Vanguard slowed as it reached the coordinates. Ahead, a structure floated silently in the void, enormous and unlike any human construction. Towers of metal and crystal spiraled toward unseen heights, and the surface glimmered with light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. It was the Arlith Citadel, a city built not for humans, but for something far beyond human comprehension. A voice spoke inside Mara's helmet, calm but urgent. "Lieutenant Vey, sensors indicate multiple life signs within the Citadel. Be aware, hostile or not, they outnumber you 10 to 1. Mara nodded to herself. "I'm aware, let's make history." The docking procedure was smooth but tense. As the clamps latched, a quiet hum filled the cabin. Mara felt a subtle vibration under her feet, power, ancient and immense. She stepped out of her ship, the human-sized armor feeling heavy but comforting. The corridor leading into the Citadel was wide, with walls that shimmered faintly. Symbols she could not recognize traced along the surface, glowing softly in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. When she entered the main hall, the air itself seemed to shift. The hall stretched higher than she could see, and at the far end, on a platform that rose like a throne in the center of the chamber, sat Velira. The Queen's presence was overwhelming. She was taller than any human, her skin a deep iridescent shade, and her eyes, Mara had to look away for a moment, seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. Around her, courtiers moved silently, their forms angular and alien, but their attention fixed entirely on the Queen. Mara's boots clicked on the polished floor as she approached, trying to remember everything she had been taught about diplomacy, about respect, about maintaining composure. Velira's gaze followed her, unblinking. Then, without a word, the Queen motioned for Mara to come closer. When Mara reached the edge of the platform, Velira spoke. The words themselves were soft, almost a melody, but when they touched Mara's mind through some strange psychic resonance, their meaning was clear. "If you die, I'll burn the galaxy," the Queen whispered. Mara froze. The words were not a threat in the casual sense. There was certainty, finality in them. The Queen meant it. Every fiber of her being seemed to promise that if Mara failed, countless stars, countless lives would burn. The weight of it pressed against Mara's chest, heavy and terrifying, but Mara didn't show fear. She lifted her chin slightly and met Velira's gaze. "Then I'll make sure I don't die," she said. Her voice was steady, though her heart was racing. The Queen's lips curved almost imperceptibly into something like approval. "Bold," she murmured. "Fragile and bold, intriguing. Perhaps humans are not as weak as I was told." Mara felt a strange relief. Respect from Velira was dangerous but rare. If she could earn it, humanity might survive. She knew the trials ahead would test her in ways she could not yet imagine, but in this moment she understood something vital. The Arlith did not simply respect strength, they demanded it. Velira's attendants moved aside, and the Queen gestured for Mara to follow her. The hall led to a chamber where the walls seemed to shift, forming shapes and paths that were both alien and beautiful. The galaxy is older than your species, Lieutenant. You live for a moment, and yet in this moment your choices ripple across worlds. You must decide if you wish to be a force of creation or destruction. Mara listened, every instinct alert. She knew the Queen's meaning was layered. Every choice mattered. Even small decisions could have consequences that echoed through light years. Hours passed as Velira outlined what Mara had to do. There would be trials, not just tests of combat, but of reasoning, morality, and ingenuity. Mara was to represent humanity, to show that her species was capable of more than survival. Failure was not an option. The Queen's earlier words replayed in Mara's mind. "If you die, I'll burn the galaxy." By the time Mara returned to her ship, the stars outside seemed both familiar and alien. She sat in her pilot's seat and exhaled. Humanity's future was suddenly in her hands, and the weight of it was immense. Every decision she made could determine the survival of millions, even billions. She checked the communications panel. Commander Harlan's voice came through again. "Lieutenant Vey, report." Mara straightened. "Mission update, first contact made. The Arleth Queen is formidable. She expects results, not excuses. And Commander," she paused, remembering the whisper, "she believes I can deliver." There was a silence on the other end, long enough that Mara wondered if he had even heard her. Then he replied, voice careful, "Understood. Proceed carefully." "And Lieutenant, good luck." Mara leaned back in her chair, eyes on the stars. Luck won't be enough, she thought. We have to be better than that. That night, alone in her cabin, Mara studied every detail she had learned about the Arleth. Their history, their culture, their technology. She ran simulations, prepared strategies, and tried to anticipate what might come. But no preparation could cover every possibility. The Arleth were too advanced, too alien. Their minds worked in ways that humans could not fully grasp. Sleep came fitfully. Dreams were filled with swirling galaxies, stars igniting and collapsing, and the voice of Velira echoing in her mind. "If you die, I'll burn the galaxy." The next morning, Mara went back to the docking platform. The Citadel awaited, the Queen's eyes already on her. Today, the first trial would begin. Humanity's fate, for better or worse, rested on her shoulders. And Mara, human to the core, ready to face challenges no other species had ever dared, stepped forward without hesitation. Mara stepped onto the platform, the Citadel's towering walls surrounding her like silent witnesses. The hall stretched endlessly, twisting and turning in ways that made her stomach lurch. She had learned quickly that the Arleth architecture was more than stone and metal. It was alive. Hallways shifted when no one looked, and floors sometimes disappeared only to reappear in different configurations. Every step forward felt like stepping deeper into a puzzle designed by minds far older than her own. Velira appeared before her without warning, moving through the space with a grace that made Mara's skin crawl. The Queen's eyes glimmered with quiet amusement. "Your first trial begins," she said. Her voice was calm but sharp, as if every word had the weight of a star collapsing. "It is simple in appearance but deadly in consequence. Show me what your species is capable of." A panel opened in the floor, and Mara peered down into a vast chamber below. The chamber stretched for what seemed like miles, filled with shifting platforms, glowing glyphs, and pools of unknown liquid that reflected the walls like dark mirrors. At the far end, she could just make out a pedestal with a small object on top. Velira's voice echoed in her mind again, "Retrieve it." Mara swallowed and stepped forward. Her boots clicked against the stone as she descended into the chamber. The air smelled faintly of ozone, and she felt the subtle hum of power beneath her feet. This place was alive, like the Citadel itself was watching. Every instinct in her body told her that one wrong step could mean death. The first obstacle appeared almost immediately. A platform floated above a pool of the black liquid, suspended by light alone. Mara's boots barely made a sound as she jumped across, but the platform tilted beneath her weight. She adjusted quickly, relying on balance and speed. Behind her, a wall shifted, closing the space she had just crossed, forcing her forward. The trial was not just physical. It was a test of reaction, adaptability, and courage. As she advanced, the platforms became smaller, moving faster, and some disappeared entirely. She could hear the faint hum of energy, almost like the room was breathing. Mara's mind worked furiously, calculating angles, estimating timing, adjusting every motion with precision. She realized the trial was designed not only to challenge strength, but to test her ability to think ahead, to adapt, to anticipate danger. When a particularly narrow platform began to tilt sharply, Mara leaped instinctively, landing on another with a roll that saved her from tumbling into the black liquid. Her chest heaved, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would be lethal here. She reminded herself of Velira's whisper replaying in her mind. "If you die, I'll burn the galaxy." It was not just a threat, it was a promise. Further ahead, the chamber widened and strange creatures emerged. They were not hostile in a simple sense, but Mara realized they were part of the trial. Their bodies glimmered like glass, and their movements were quick, unpredictable. They did not attack blindly. Instead, they mirrored her actions, forcing her to adjust constantly. Every step she took, they adapted. The creatures tested her patience, her perception, her ability to remain composed under pressure. Mara remembered the simulations she had studied before this mission. She had practiced scenarios like this, but nothing could fully prepare her. Humans had creativity, she reminded herself, ingenuity that even advanced species could not anticipate. It was time to use it. When the creatures closed in, she shifted her approach. Instead of trying to outrun them, she observed their movements, noting patterns in their attacks. She used their reflections in the liquid pools to anticipate the next move, then leaped and rolled in ways that disrupted their rhythm. One by one, they fell behind, unable to keep up with the unpredictable strategy. Mara felt a surge of triumph, tempered by caution. There was still far to go. At the center of the chamber, she faced the most difficult obstacle yet, a narrow bridge suspended over a chasm filled with a swirling, luminous energy. The bridge was barely wide enough for her boots, and it swayed violently. A gust of wind, or perhaps something more, blew across the span, threatening to knock her off balance. Mara froze for a moment, analyzing the motion. One wrong move would be catastrophic. She focused, remembering her training. Step, balance, step, breathe. Time slowed in her mind as she placed each foot carefully, adjusting her weight with precision. The bridge seemed to resist her passage, tilting, shaking, daring her to fall. Mara's hands brushed the faintly glowing rail at her side, giving her leverage as she moved forward. Her heart pounded, but fear was replaced with determination. She would not fail. Humanity's survival depended on it. Reaching the end of the bridge, Mara finally saw the pedestal. The object resting atop it was small, a crystalline device that pulsed with light. It seemed insignificant compared to the challenge of reaching it, but Mara knew that the trial was far more than a simple retrieval. It was a measure of her mind, her spirit, and her ability to confront danger with intelligence. As she grasped the object, the chamber reacted immediately. Platforms shifted violently, and the creatures returned, more aggressive than before. Mara held the device tightly, sprinting toward the exit with everything she had learned in the trial. She jumped, ducked, and rolled with precision, her movements fluid, controlled, and instinctive. The final stretch felt endless, but she refused to look back. The whisper of the Queen's words urged her forward. "If you die, I'll burn the galaxy." Finally, she reached the exit. The floor shifted once more, and the chamber behind her closed, leaving only silence. Mara exhaled heavily, her chest tight, muscles trembling. She had completed the trial, not flawlessly, but successfully. The object in her hands glowed faintly, a sign of her achievement. When she returned to the surface of the citadel, Velira awaited her. The Queen's eyes glimmered, and for the first time, Mara thought she saw something like admiration. "You have succeeded," Velira said. "Your species is more clever than I imagined. You adapt, you improvise." "Perhaps humanity has a place among the stars after all," Mara bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only hope I can continue to live up to your expectations." Velira's gaze softened slightly, but it remained powerful. "Expectations are not enough, Lieutenant. Action defines you. You have proven yourself today, but remember the trials are only beginning. Greater challenges await, and the consequences of failure are far heavier than you can imagine." Mara nodded, understanding the weight of the words. Every trial was designed not only to test her skills, but to measure humanity's potential. If she failed, the consequences would not be hers alone. They could ripple across worlds, across civilizations. Back in her cabin, Mara examined the crystalline device she had retrieved. It pulsed gently in her hands like it contained a heartbeat of its own. She could feel its energy resonating with her own, a subtle reminder of the trial's purpose. It was not just a tool, it was a lesson, a test of human creativity, courage, and endurance. That night she reflected on what she had learned. Humans were small, fragile, and untested compared to ancient civilizations like the Arlith. Yet they had qualities that no machine or advanced species could replicate: adaptability, ingenuity, and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. Mara realized that these traits, often overlooked or underestimated, might be humanity's greatest weapon. Sleep came slowly, but Mara's mind was active with strategies and possibilities. The next trial would be even more dangerous, more complex. She did not know what form it would take, but she knew that preparation, quick thinking, and courage would be her only allies. She allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. She had survived. She had succeeded. Humanity had a chance, however slim, to prove itself in a galaxy that did not easily forgive weakness. Morning arrived with the hum of the Citadel awakening. Myra suited up and stepped onto the platform once more. The chamber below awaited, but this time it would not be the same. She had learned to observe, to anticipate, and to trust in her own instincts. The trials were designed to break her, but Mara would not break. Valira appeared, her presence as commanding as ever. "Your first test is complete," she said. "You have survived, but do not grow complacent. The galaxy is not gentle. Strength, cunning, and courage are necessary for survival. You will need all of them and more." Mara nodded, determination burning in her chest. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will not fail." The Queen's eyes glimmered with something Mara could not quite name. Approval, challenge, perhaps both. "We shall see," Valira murmured, fading into the shadows of the Citadel. Mara turned to the stars visible through the massive windows of the Citadel. Humanity's journey had begun in earnest. The trials would test her, push her to limits she could not yet imagine. But one truth remained clear in her mind: humans were capable of more than they realized. And Mara Vey would ensure that the galaxy learned it as well. She inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of responsibility, the thrill of possibility, and the spark of determination that refused to die. The first trial had ended, but the path ahead was only beginning. Humanity had survived the first test, and Mara knew that their story in the stars had just begun. The glow from the crystalline device Mara had retrieved in the first trial still pulsed faintly in her cabin, a soft reminder of her success. But Mara knew better than to celebrate for long. The Citadel's silence was never harmless. Every shadow could conceal a test, every flicker of light could signal danger. She had learned that the Arlith's trials were not only physical, they probed minds, intentions, and the heart. When she left her cabin, the corridors of the Citadel were empty, yet alive with subtle motion. Walls shimmered faintly as if breathing. Mara's senses were on high alert. Every instinct told her that this trial would be unlike the first. It would demand more than agility and quick thinking. It would test her understanding of strategy, trust, and human resilience. Valira appeared before her, emerging from the shadows without sound. The Queen's eyes glimmered, reflecting the endless depth of the Citadel. "You have passed your first test," she said, "but the next trial will judge more than your skills. It will judge your people." Mara straightened. "I understand, Your Majesty." The Queen gestured, and a projection appeared in the air, showing a system of planets in a remote sector of the galaxy. Mara recognized them as uncharted worlds. "You will journey to these locations. Each contains a fragment of the Key of Concordance," Valira explained. "It is an artifact that can unify or destroy alliances across the galaxy. You must retrieve all fragments. Fail, and the consequences are beyond imagination." Mara's heart pounded. The stakes were higher than before. One misstep could not only cost her life, but could also jeopardize human relations with countless civilizations. And yet, she felt a thrill, a chance to prove humanity could rise above fear and meet challenges no other species might dare face. Her first stop was the planet Sarath, a world dominated by dense, twisting jungles and massive crystal formations. Sensors warned of strong magnetic storms that could disable their ships, forcing Mara to rely on ingenuity rather than technology. As the Aurora Vanguard descended, Mara felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. The unknown had always excited humans, and she intended to turn that curiosity into survival. Landing was difficult. The ship shuddered under turbulent winds, and Mara's hands flew over the controls to stabilize it. When the ramp lowered, she stepped into the jungle. The air was thick and humid, filled with alien scents. Shadows moved between the massive crystal spires, and strange calls echoed through the trees. Mara's eyes scanned constantly, aware that the Arlith's trials were never straightforward. The fragment of the Key of Concordance was said to rest in the heart of the jungle, protected by both the environment and automated Arlith guardians. Mara pressed forward, relying on maps projected from her suit and her own observations. Rivers of glowing liquid cut across her path, and trees twisted in impossible angles, challenging her sense of balance. Yet she adapted, leaping across gaps, using vines and crystal branches to swing herself over obstacles, demonstrating the ingenuity humans were known for. Hours passed before she reached a clearing. At the center stood a pedestal similar to the one in her first trial, glowing faintly. But as she approached, movement in the trees caught her attention. A group of Arlith soldiers emerged, their expressions unreadable, weapons raised. Mara froze for a fraction of a second, her mind raced. The first trial had prepared her for danger, but this was different. They were not creatures to be outsmarted with agility alone. Mara quickly assessed her options. Retreating was impossible, the soldiers would prevent it. Fighting head-on was risky, but humans had something even the Arlith could not predict, unconventional thinking. She activated a small holographic emitter from her pack, creating multiple decoy images of herself. The soldiers fired, missing every time. Using the confusion, Mara sprinted forward, weaving between crystal formations and reached the pedestal. She grabbed the fragment, but the moment her hands touched it, the jungle shifted violently. Trees uprooted, crystal spires rotated, and the ground beneath her began to crack. The Guardians were not mechanical but part of the planet itself, responding to her actions. Mara's mind raced. She analyzed patterns, predicting how the terrain would move, and adapted her path. Every step was precise, every leap calculated. When she finally cleared the danger zone, she was exhausted, but the fragment was secure. Returning to the ship, Mara sensed that the trial was not over. Something had changed. The air in the Citadel felt tense when she reported her success to Velira. "You have retrieved one fragment," the Queen said, her voice calm yet sharp. "But not all trials are what they seem. Expect deception even from those who seem your allies." Mara felt a chill. Deception. In her experience, the Arlith's trials had always involved direct danger, not betrayal. But if Velira said it, it was likely true. Her next destination was the planet Kalis, a desert world with enormous canyons and extreme temperatures. The landing was smoother than Sarath, but Mara immediately sensed something off. Data from her sensors indicated multiple human vessels were approaching the planet, yet they were not in communication. Something about the readings did not add up. As Mara scouted the canyon for the second fragment, she realized the truth. This was a trap. The approaching ships were not friendly. They were human, but rogue, a faction that had broken away, believing they could claim the Key of Concordance for themselves. Mara's mind raced. She knew she could not fight them directly. Their numbers were too great, and she had no support. Yet humans thrived in impossible situations. Using the terrain to her advantage, Mara devised a plan. She led the rogue faction into narrow canyon passes where their ships could not maneuver easily. She used small drones and reflective surfaces to create false targets, making it seem like her presence was elsewhere. The rogue humans chased shadows while Mara climbed to high vantage points, observing and adapting with precision. One by one, their plans failed against her ingenuity. She retrieved the second fragment without direct confrontation, her cleverness outmatching brute force. Reporting back to Velira, Mara felt a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The Queen's eyes glimmered as she spoke. "You have faced more than danger. You have faced treachery. Few species can navigate both and survive. You demonstrate that humanity is unpredictable, resilient, and capable of rising to the challenge." Mara nodded, though she felt the weight of what lay ahead. 2 fragments were still missing, and each trial was escalating. But she also felt a quiet confidence growing. Humans were underestimated, often dismissed as fragile or reckless. Yet these qualities, curiosity, creativity, and determination, were exactly what gave them an edge. The third fragment was hidden on the oceanic planet Lyria, a world covered almost entirely by water with enormous storms that could swallow a ship whole. Mara arrived in the midst of a hurricane. The Aurora Vanguard struggled against the winds, and Mara's hands flew over the controls, adjusting constantly. She reminded herself of her training and the first trial. Adaptability was key. Humans had survived far worse on their home planet, and she intended to prove it again. Diving beneath the stormy waves, Mara navigated through giant kelp-like growths and submerged ruins, her suit shielding her from pressure and cold. The fragment lay within a cavern, guarded by natural traps and complex currents. Every obstacle demanded careful thought and split-second decisions. Mara analyzed the flow of water, the position of obstacles, and her own movement, and in a delicate balance of planning and instinct, she retrieved the fragment. When she emerged from the water, she felt exhilarated. Humanity's strengths, creativity, courage, and adaptability had carried her through again. She transmitted the 3 fragments to Valira, who acknowledged receipt without a word of praise. Mara understood. The queen respected results more than words. But just as she prepared for the final fragment, disaster struck. Rogue Arlith warriors, loyal to a faction opposed to Valira, intercepted her. Their goal was to seize the fragments and test human fragility. Mara found herself outnumbered, trapped on a small asteroid orbiting the ocean planet. The situation seemed hopeless, yet she refused to panic. She studied the terrain and her surroundings. Using the asteroid's magnetic field, she created an impromptu trap, drawing the warriors into a narrow corridor where their superior numbers became a disadvantage. Then, using a combination of quick maneuvers and improvised tools, Mara incapacitated the warriors without lethal force. Her ingenuity and courage allowed her not just to survive, but to protect the fragments. Returning to Valira, Mara felt the queen's gaze more intense than ever. "You have endured trials of skill, strategy, and loyalty," the queen said. "Few species could navigate these challenges. Few would survive the pressures of deceit and danger. You are beginning to prove humanity's worth. But remember, the final test is the greatest of all. It will challenge everything you know about yourself and your people." Mara bowed, aware of the weight of the words. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humans had a spark that no technology or ancient wisdom could predict. She had survived the trials of Serath, Kalis, and Lyria, and she would face the final test with the same resolve. Humanity's place among the stars depended on it. As she prepared for the last journey, Mara looked out at the stars. The trials had been more than physical. They had tested the mind, the spirit, and the heart. She had learned that humans, though fragile, were capable of extraordinary ingenuity and courage. And she knew that no matter what lay ahead, she would face it as humans always did, undaunted, adaptable, and unbroken. Mara stood on the deck of the Aurora Vanguard, staring at the final destination, the shattered planet of Kythera. Its surface was a patchwork of jagged cliffs and deep chasms, scarred by centuries of cosmic storms and ancient conflicts. This was where the last fragment of the Key of Concordance lay, and Mara knew it would be the hardest challenge yet. Valira's voice echoed in her mind, a whisper of both warning and encouragement. "The final trial will test everything you are. Fail, and the galaxy itself may burn." The ship descended slowly through the turbulent atmosphere. Mara's hands moved over the controls with precision, stabilizing the vessel as lightning arcs danced across the sky. The storm seemed almost alive, as if the planet itself was aware of her presence. She adjusted her strategy, taking into account wind patterns, magnetic interference, and the treacherous terrain below. Every decision counted, and there was no room for error. Landing was a violent jolt. Mara gritted her teeth, steadying herself as the ramp lowered. She stepped onto the fractured ground, the air thick with the smell of ozone and scorched metal. The fragment of the Key of Concordance was said to lie within the central canyon, guarded by both natural hazards and the most sophisticated Arlith constructs she had encountered. This was not just a trial of skill, it was a test of humanity's courage, resilience, and intellect. The canyon walls rose impossibly high, casting long shadows across the jagged terrain. Mara activated her suit's sensors and map projections, plotting a path through the labyrinthine passageways. The first obstacle was immediate, a chasm too wide to jump, with unstable bridges crumbling into the depths below. Mara scanned the surrounding rocks and debris. Using her suit's magnetic grappling tools and quick calculations, she anchored a makeshift bridge, moving across with careful precision. Each step was a gamble, but she refused to hesitate. As she advanced, Mara noticed movement in the shadows. Rogue Arlith warriors, loyal to factions opposed to Valira, emerged, surrounding her on all sides. Their armor glimmered in the stormy light, weapons at the ready. Mara assessed the situation. She was outnumbered and direct combat would be suicidal. But humans had something her enemies could not anticipate: creativity and unpredictability. She activated a series of holographic decoys, projecting multiple images of herself across the canyon. The warriors fired, missing each time, distracted by the illusions. Mara moved quickly, using the chaos to scale a nearby rock face. From her elevated position, she analyzed the terrain and the enemy's movement patterns, devising a plan. Leaping from rock to rock, she triggered controlled collapses in the canyon, forcing the warriors into narrow corridors where their numbers became a disadvantage. Using quick improvised tools, she incapacitated them one by one, not with lethal force but with clever traps and environmental manipulation. Her movements were precise, efficient, and unpredictable, qualities that defined humanity in the face of overwhelming odds. Finally, she reached the central canyon where the fragment awaited. It rested on a pedestal, glowing with an intense light that pulsed like a heartbeat. But the trial was not yet over. As Mara approached, the pedestal began to shift, raising barriers and activating energy fields designed to test reflexes and intelligence simultaneously. Mara studied the patterns, timing her movements with precision. Step by step, she navigated the traps, drawing on everything she had learned from previous trials. When her hand finally closed around the fragment, the energy fields pulsed violently, threatening to knock her off balance. Mara adjusted immediately, using her suit's stabilizers and her own strength to hold on. She felt a surge of exhilaration. This was the culmination of everything she had trained for, every instinct sharpened by months of challenges. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The rogue Arlith warriors were regrouping, and additional environmental hazards emerged. Rocks fell from above, lightning struck with deadly precision, and the canyon seemed to close in around her. Mara's mind raced, analyzing options, calculating trajectories, and improvising solutions. The human ability to adapt under pressure became her greatest weapon. With a combination of precise leaps, rapid adjustments, and clever use of her environment, Mara reached a safe platform and secured the fragment. For a moment, the storm seemed to pause, as if acknowledging her achievement. The fragments of the Key of Concordance now glowed in unison, a symbol of success and unity. As she prepared to return to the Aurora Vanguard, Valira appeared before her. The Queen's presence was immense, her eyes reflecting both power and admiration. "You have completed the trials, Lieutenant Mara Vey," she said. "You have faced danger, deception, and impossible odds. You have proven that your species is not weak, not fragile. You are capable of extraordinary ingenuity and courage." Mara bowed, feeling the weight of the Queen's words. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I could not have succeeded without the lessons of the trials and without the trust you placed in humanity." Valira's gaze softened slightly. "Trust is earned through action, not words. You have shown that humans can rise to the challenge, even when faced with forces greater than themselves. The galaxy has observed, and it will take note." The return journey to the Citadel was quiet, giving Mara time to reflect. Each trial had pushed her to the limits of human capability, physically, mentally, and morally. Yet through each challenge, she had relied not on brute force alone, but on adaptability, intelligence, and determination. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed as fragile or reckless, but Mara's actions demonstrated that these traits were exactly what made humans resilient. Upon returning to the Citadel, Mara presented the complete Key of Concordance to Valira. The Queen studied it carefully, her fingers brushing over the glowing fragments. "You have not only survived," she said. "You have succeeded where many would have failed. This is a testament to your species' potential, Lieutenant. Humans are not simply observers in the galaxy. You are participants capable of shaping the future." Mara felt a surge of pride and relief. The trials had been more than physical tests. They had measured ingenuity, adaptability, courage, and moral strength. Humanity had proven itself worthy, not through violence or dominance, but through intelligence, resilience, and creativity. Yet even in this moment of triumph, Mara knew that the galaxy remained dangerous. Alliances were fragile, conflicts endless, and challenges unceasing. But she also knew that humans had qualities that allowed them to endure and thrive. They were unpredictable, adaptable, and determined. And now, with the Key of Concordance complete, they had earned a place at the galactic table. Valira turned to Mara, her voice both firm and approving. The trials are complete, but the future is ongoing. The galaxy is vast, filled with both peril and opportunity. Humanity has shown that it can rise to the challenge. But never forget, the survival of your species depends on constant growth, courage, and wisdom. Mara nodded. I understand, Your Majesty, we will not forget. The Queen's eyes glimmered, a hint of approval shining through. We shall see. You have begun to prove that humans can be a force for good, a species capable of more than mere survival. Continue to grow, continue to learn, and the galaxy will take notice. As Mara returned to the Aurora Vanguard, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had survived the trials, faced danger, and outsmarted impossible odds. They had proven that strength was not always measured by size or power, but by creativity, courage, and determination. The stars outside the Citadel stretched endlessly, filled with unknown worlds and unseen challenges. Mara looked at them and smiled, knowing that humanity's journey was only beginning. The trials had tested them, shaped them, and prepared them for the greater adventures that awaited. And somewhere deep in the Citadel, Velira watched, her presence a reminder of the weight of the galaxy, the power of the Arlith, and the potential of humanity. Mara knew that one day she would face even greater trials, but for now she had proven that humans could stand among the stars as equals, not as spectators, and that their courage, ingenuity, and spirit were forces to be reckoned with. The first trials were complete, the key of concordance secured, and humanity had earned its place in the galaxy. Mara Vey, pilot, strategist, and symbol of human ingenuity, had shown that even in a universe dominated by ancient powers, humans could rise, adapt, and thrive. The galaxy had witnessed it, and Mara knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would echo across the stars. With the fragments in place and the trials behind her, Mara prepared the Aurora Vanguard for departure. She looked at the glowing shards, feeling the hum of power beneath her fingers. This was not just a tool. It was a symbol of potential, a promise that humans could shape their destiny. The galaxy waited, and Mara Vey, with human ingenuity as her guide, would meet it head-on.